Hi everyone, this is meteorologist Amy Metz, and you can go ahead and follow me on Facebook if you're wanting more updates on what's going on with Hurricane Ida a little bit quicker. Right now, Kyle Cutton, the storm chaser I worked with last year through Hurricane Laura, is there now. He had said during this road trip while they're driving to the center of the storm, there were power flashes going on and possible funnel clouds spinning up. And so this was hours ago last night. There were some outer bands pulling into the storm already. So that's the look on the ground last night. He's there again today if you want to find out some live feeds from the ground. I'll be sharing more of his information on Facebook, but of course he's there on YouTube in real time live right now. So he's showing the rain as it's coming in. There's been some light flooding so far, but the bulk of this storm is still hovering over the open waters of the Gulf. So I'm going to go ahead and dive into this one first, and then we'll talk a little bit about Nora, which is in fact looking like it might get some of that eye wall over Mexico today. A little bit less in strength with Nora. So Ida is what we're really watching for. Was major devastation is expected here from storm surge. Anything east of the eye wall, which is right here, we can barely see an eye wall there. Looks maybe like it might be a little bit slanted or having a thin layer of clouds hovering over it at one level. And so from this point, anything toward the east is where a lot of that very fast-moving wind is going to be pushing water up onto land. So we have a lot of low-lying parishes all around what is sticking out here into the water, into the Gulf of Mexico. And so as this storm pushes in, there's a lot of levees here, and so evacuations were mandatory for people who were within certain portions or within certain positions from the levees. However, if people were protected by them, they were not being asked to evacuate, and I have been against that since the beginning. So I hope that if you have loved ones here, I've heard a lot of stories, people staying behind, just make sure that they have their bathtubs filled with water. They're going to be out of water, they're going to be out of power for a while. This could be up to weeks for anywhere in these Louisiana parishes. And then I do also have a hospital worker I'm following, a family of a friend, who is staying behind to help people in the hospital as her job requires. She built a Category 5 grade home. So I'll be keeping you informed on how that holds up. And I did want to take one little quick at space weather too here because it has been playing a role here. We had geomagnetic storms on the 28th, which means we can have trouble with emergency relief efforts. Luckily, the sunspots I was showing the other day, showing right here, the bright spots on this solar image, they did not produce any more M-class flares, so it's not as bad for radio communications. But as the hours move on and into tomorrow, we're going to be needing those emergency radio communication lines open in order to appropriately help people and search and rescue. And so hopefully these don't get any more massive storms like we saw with Irma, where in Puerto Rico there were extreme problems from space weather at the same time as this weather. So here I'll update the buoys, and I was interested in seeing the actual rise in water here because that's going to be a major player. We've been hearing anything from 8 to 15 feet of water rises, but now with these buoy reports we can get more accurate information. And a lot of them end up going down for different reasons around storms, and for other reasons they don't all take in the same amount of information. And so here I actually have this set up, I think, on a different part now because I'm not, sometimes they'll have tsunami, so I'm going to change this to tsunami up here. And that would tell me the rise in water. And normally these little yellow ones would pulsate, so I might need to refresh this or come back to this. And so I'll exit this one for now because some of these other informations will show it just a little bit lower resolution. So with windy here, this is the infrared satellite loop, and we can see that that eye wall is getting very, very close to making landfall. I was saying Grand Isle as I'm seeing this getting closer. Before I was anywhere from Oma to New Orleans. So the storm does look like it will pass right between there. And remember, with these strong winds of 150 miles per hour, that will be at the core of the eye wall. and anywhere away from that is going to rapidly decrease in intensity, but there will be very strong gusts still anywhere throughout the storm, including these outer bands where we're seeing some plumes of moisture pop up very far from the center of rotation. So that's why hundreds of miles from the storm, we could be seeing wind reports even today in Tennessee. So this is something to watch and keep watching for, even if you're not necessarily right next to this storm. So 150 miles per hour at the core is what happened. We did see a rapid intensification, not once, but twice. As I had been reporting, we probably would, because this water is so much warmer right here along the coast, and there was no wind shear to help destroy it. So we're seeing white of about 120 mile per hour gusts extending as far inland as Macomb, Mississippi. So go ahead and be very, very aware of the weather today and tomorrow if you are anywhere in the southeast, because Huntsville, Alabama, North Georgia, Tennessee, they will all have great chance for extreme wind damages. And then as this storm passes the Appalachians, I'm even more concerned with upper level forcing mechanisms that will have a lot of tornadoes along the east coast. So what I mean by that, I'll slow this down, maybe back it up a little, and I'm going to show you where the jet wave pattern is right now. So a little higher in the sky, around where the jets fly, 300 millibars. I'll zoom out now because these are very long waves here. You'll see ridges and you'll see troughs. They go down, up into a ridge, down into a trough. Sometimes they can tilt and turn. And so all of this has a lot to do with what the weather will do. Right now, I always like data more than I like forecasts, because I create my own forecast based on the data, like a computer model does, without some of their tendencies or leaving out certain variables. So here with this ridge just directly north of the storm, it tells me that's where it's going to want to be moving. It likes to choose the path of least resistance. So this will pull up into this ridge. There had been a high pressure in the mid and lower levels right around here that was helping to steer the storm. So a high pressure here does the clockwise motion, while Ida was counterclockwise spinning toward the Gulf and the coastal waters of Louisiana. So this helped propel it and push it northward. And the next thing that will help pull and push is that it's going to want to go around the top side of this high pressure as the longer wave that was higher in the sky pushes past with a trough. It will get swept eastward, as we normally see with these storms. And so back up to higher in the sky with the tornadoes is that the severe weather happens in this region where the cursor is most of the time. We're calling this the right exit region, if I want to be more specific, with this jet streak right here, where the air, instead of moving parallel, the wind barbs there, the little vectors, they're almost kind of pushing away from one another. And that's an upper level divergence. So when that happens, the air up above is diverging. It's moving away from each other. And because of that, it's going to want to fill that air back up. It comes from down below because we're so high up in the sky. This is like the top of the atmosphere. So down from the surface, we'll have rising air to fill in these pockets where the air is moving away and making space for it. When that happens, it rises up into a cloud most of the time because of the temperature differential. So in that case, we have the most severe weather in these right exit regions. And so as this continues progressing, I'm going to play out this model. I just saw some chances that this storm could be catching up with a secondary right exit region that may develop later on. And that is my biggest concern. When we're having a lot of different directions in the wind movement from up above to down below by the surface, that will increase the chance for tornadoes. So even though the storm falls apart, Ida no longer looks like it has that circulation there. It would probably be a depression or a remnant low technically at that time. It starts feeding into this jet streak here. So we could have some different productions from that right in this region along the east coast, produce extra tornadoes and some severe weather because of the interaction and how they will play off of one another. And now today, I hope everybody has evacuated and it can be safe that needed to, and if not, that you at least know where the local shelters are. And like I talked about, filling up bathtubs with water. One reason for that is because when there's no water, you can't even flush your toilet, so that's going to help if you need to dump some water in the back of your toilet so you can flush it while the water is out. or water for cleaning dishes, for drinking, for cleaning yourself. So I have actually been displaced a lot this week because of busted pipes, different places I'm going. And I got to, kind of live that lifestyle for a few days where I just had to live off of the water that we had saved up or gone and picked up. So I can understand a little bit more now how that becomes useful in these situations. So just get as much water as you can, as much ice in the freezer as you can before you lose power if you're anywhere around here. Now I'm going to go ahead and pinpoint the regions, let's say up to Baton Rouge and over to Gulfport. That would be the furthest extension up to state line of Mississippi where I would expect long-term power outages, but most definitely in these parishes in South Louisiana. I'm 1 to 2 weeks without power. So if you have any questions, go ahead and comment. I had some the other day in here, and they're not popping up live in the stream. They're coming up later, it seems like. So I'll just go back and check those again later. And I want to run through the sea surface temperatures just for completedness here. I'd been saying this pool of warm water here was going to be a big major player. I'm going to go back so this can refresh. Actually, I'd like the loop. So the analyses loop here, I was showing the other day, had this warm pool of water, which hurricanes like to follow. So I believe that's why the computer models, the forecast models, were tending a little bit more west than what we're seeing now, because this is usually a major player. But I don't believe that the computer models gave that high pressure system that is now right here. I don't think they gave it enough of a forcing mechanism, because it did drive the storm more eastward than the models were suggesting. Not by much, but by a little bit. Originally we'd seen the landfall about here per the models, but I had been suggesting here, and this is where it ends up that it is right now. So this is interesting to watch, and it does look like some of that warmer water did end up pooling around to this side as that storm is now pulling water down and around. So that's all I have on Ida for now. I hope that, I just hope the best. And, this is the time where we prepare for the worst, hope for the best. But this is definitely nearing Category 5 right there. And now what happened with Nora, looks like, did it just fall apart or what? Because Nora was here the other day, but just skirting so close along the coast. Yes, it did make a landfall is what's happening, so it did start to fall apart. There's a lot of topography here, a lot of different buildings and mountains that will kind of deteriorate this in different parts along the coast here, where the wind will just push into it and it can't keep the tight circulation because all of a sudden it's hitting like a wall, basically. So there is still a lot of flooding with this. I'll go ahead and switch to the satellite so you can understand then that there are still a lot of torrential downpours with Nora, even though we're not seeing those strong winds or the eye wall. These red plumes are still popping up even as this is pulling up moisture from the equator as far away as Nicaragua. So this could move on to land here today, and we already had a lot of torrential downpours in this region, in the Yucatan. And so if these are happening near peaks right now, it's very likely that there could be landslides. So that's something to be wary of in that area. And then with Nora, this storm shall still be skirting up along the coast. So that means Mexico City is in for a big drencher today. This could mean flash flooding for those concrete areas. Water rising high enough in the low-lying areas that cars could be swept away, because this is now day 3 and a week after Grace passed over Mexico City, right with the eye wall, right over it. So be heeding any kind of warnings that are here. Maybe sometimes it's better to check the radar and decide to leave work later or earlier based on certain things that you might be seeing coming your way. For instance, anybody who is a little bit less affected by the storm in Tallahassee, we just finished lunchtime in that area. So pretty soon here, kids will be getting out of school. And if these classes are still in session, there is a ton of lightning because of space weather right now. It's going to be an excess amount of lightning. The flash floods on I-10 will be very intense today, especially low-lying coastal regions, even as far as Panama City, as I had been mentioning. So these will be pushing on, and as a parent, I would just want to be looking at the radar before I left to go get my kids, and just to make sure it's a safe time for driving when you go. So what I'll say about that, in case you're not a meteorologist and don't know how to read this stuff, if I was in Pensacola, I have a home nearby, so if I was here and I was going to go pick up my kids, I would want to wait until some of this dry was coming toward me. I definitely would not want to be out driving. Well, I mean, I kind of do because I like to chase storms, be in this, but very safely. I wouldn't recommend that to anybody because I know how this stuff works. But the yellow is going to be very light rain, kind of like a drizzle to just a light rainfall. So if you're, like right now is when I would want to go. If I was in Pensacola, I would wait for all this orange, all of this red to be gone now. Now you can go and you know that what's coming behind it is all of this. Unlike some storm systems that can change rapidly, hurricanes, they'll follow the same trends. We're going to have these outer bands pushing around counterclockwise, and so you can see what's behind them, and you can see where the dry spots are up until that point where the winds start to really pick up toward the core, and we start reaching 100-mile-per-hour winds here. In that case, these yellows and these oranges of light rainfall don't really mean much as far as safe driving. I would still be very scared for the wind gusts then in this portion of the storm. So I hope everybody can make it through this okay, and that we continue to learn from these things all together. We can maybe create stronger builds. There are plenty of options. So I'm going to continue researching and producing some videos to share about the weatherproof homes that are out there and how maybe we could implement them into our standard communities so that we don't have so much waste or so much fear as these things are moving on. Now I think that that's all I really would have there. I may as well just show you the SDO sun since it was next in line there from yesterday when we had a filament eruption. There were some flares that I was talking about, so since this is open, I'll just show you what that looks like. We had an M-class flare pop out of this sunspot just the other day. Doesn't seem to want to play though. So refreshing may help. And now you'll see these bright spots and then that black kind of cloud. So filament eruptions. This is what scientists who study the sun call the sun waking up. We're about to reach our solar maximum on the short end of the scale, the Maunder minimum maximum. They go every 11 years. So at that point, I did notice that tornadoes do increase the amount of tornadoes we have. I do think there are a lot more connections here between space weather and Earth weather than we have studied so far. These satellites getting this information and that big, huge filament eruption that came toward Earth and gave us the geomagnetic storm, these things have only been there for 30 years now. So we're finally able to start introducing them into our climate models and seeing how this could actually have a long-term climate effect, not just from theory and observation, but also from that, quantitative data that we are now pulling from the sun, thanks to the GOES satellites that are also not just watching this stuff, satellites out in space, but the GOES will capture, when you see that big black leaf here, this filament eruption, that did pass our GOES satellite that's in our Earth's atmosphere. So from that, we got to see magnetometer data, we get to see proton data. There's a lot more going on there behind the scenes that is used for the scientists to understand a little bit better how this plays roles on what. So I'm excited to keep sharing about that and understanding why there's so much lightning out there. It's because we ionized the upper atmosphere with space weather this week. So be in for a show there, especially when you see these cloud tops get higher, and that the red indicates that they're higher up, they're colder. And that's where the storm then is able to touch the ionosphere, which is the charged part of the atmosphere. So anything below that, where it's lighter rain, it oftentimes is just lower lying. It's not as high in the sky, and therefore it's not even touching the charged portion of the atmosphere and able to connect those charges from cloud to ground or intra-cloud even. So enjoy the weather, and thank you for watching. I'll keep posting on my Facebook. For those that aren't familiar with it, facebook.com/theworldofweather is something that you can always access whether you have Facebook or not. You can come onto here, and it looks a little different for other people, so I'll scroll down fast. But here I have a lot of forecasts going on all the time, and then sharing other people's work that I know are out there, storm chasing, people who are aerial photographers, emergency relief people, And so I'll be sharing their stories and connecting a lot more here than I do anywhere else. And if you've never seen what happens with these, before I say goodbye, you can go to my YouTube page. I think it's about the 6th or 7th video back now, called Hurricane Laura, before, during, and after. This shows how these storms can end up in the Gulf after hitting Cuba and rapidly intensify like we just saw this time. So perhaps Laura of last year, the strongest hurricane to make U.S. landfall since 1856, could then get replaced by what's going on here today. So you'll see that I was expecting rapid intensification here, and all of a sudden the eye wall ended up forming once it got a little bit further into the Gulf, like we saw with Ida. So go ahead and see if this goes all the way through to where Kyle Cutton was inside a parking garage and saw somebody get hurt who decided to walk out in the middle of the storm that was not associated with anybody that was there. But he was there for the full ride, and we show it all here. It was very extreme. This aired on the Weather Channel a couple weeks ago, and I just can't stress enough how serious this is. With the Cameron, Louisiana is now demolished. It's still, some of the industrial companies had rebuilt and fixed things, but some of them still are not fixed, even the larger corporate things. So now that this next storm, Ida, is heading toward a more populated region with more possibility for longer term flooding, I do believe this is going to be even worse than we saw last year. So I'm very sorry to everybody there who's dealing with this, and I'll continue to do my part by sharing and studying how we can build the weatherproof homes. So enjoy the weather, and I hope the best for everybody.